This hunt started out in 2017. I was going to church one day, and I had a good friend of mine come over and ask me if I could help them and their son. They were out elk hunting, and it turned out that this guy, Riley Coley, and his father were out elk hunting. And a little background on Riley is Riley has been fighting cancer for several years. Back in high school, he was actually diagnosed with cancer, and he fought it, went through a lot of chemo, and just like most brave cancer patients do, he fought it through, and he had gone through all the radiation treatments, and he was in there was no sign of it, and so he's been doing pretty well for the last year or so. He had the world by the tail. He was an offensive lineman for Bingham High School, which is a national competitor for football, and he was excelling in that. And to have cancer step in the middle of your life and all of a sudden disrupt your current plans and visions, it would be hard for anybody to go through. But what we've found in the character, spending time with this guy Riley, is that he's a fighter. His father, Paul Coley, and Riley were out hunting, and they came back after the first weekend and saw him at church and said, "Hey, Gary, do you have any idea where there's some bulls and where we could help you?" And so immediately I thought, absolutely, sure. Let's see if we can help you go on some public land. And we did not come out successful, and the season was over. But we decided, we're gonna do this again. We're gonna get you an elk, and we missed out on the opportunity in 2017. So in February of 2018, I ran into a gentleman by the name of Kent Clegg, who was with the Cooperative Wildlife Management Unit coordinator. And as I saw his booth, they were kind of promoting, the CWMUs and what they had, and it kind of piqued my interest. Like, hey, how do you get a tag for someone who's, whether they're a wounded warrior or cancer patient or someone with a terminal illness or some sort? And he told me that they have a surplus. And so we asked, hey, could we put in a submission for our good friend Riley Coley? And after a few weeks and review, they called back and said they had a tag for us if we could find the property. Well, we had a good friend, Austin Walker, who had been really hard networking with everybody out in the Basin area to find a tag. But he had a really good friend, and they are owner-operators of the Sand Creek Cooperative Management Unit. And so after a call to those gentlemen, they agreed to let Riley come and hunt. So in September of 2018, we went during the middle of the rut, September 27th, I believe, 28th, 29th, just perfect time of the year. On day one of the hunt, it turns out that Chaz, who was a local, he knew the country, and also our film and cameraman, took Riley up to a particular area, and where they got into, they found a herd of bulls, but unfortunately they were only a little far out of reach for a shot. So they watched him, got close, kind of figured him out, and they figured, okay, the next day they return, be there for the morning hunt. And it turns out that they're in flip-flop positions, where that didn't work out so well on day two. So one of the things that was difficult in that first 2 days was actually the smoke. There was a nearby forest fire, and all the smoke in the air was just making it extremely difficult for a guy who's going through lung cancer. As Riley's earlier had beat this tennis ball sized tumor that was in his lung, and so he's really was kind of having some hard time breathing that smoke, and so that made it a little bit of a challenge to go too far, too hard, push, where maybe some guys would go ballistic and go chase after a bull anywhere, but we were kind of limited on some of our physical, I guess, effort. On day three, we went back to the place where we saw the elk for the third morning and spotted the elk, made a game plan, drove over around to the mountain, and made an attempt up to the backside of the mountain.
Morning, Tom.
Morning.
So do you want to go up and find a spot? Kaz was saying we'd probably pile in your truck for a while and
yeah, get up there higher.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, see you.
Right, just go on the road by those reddish.
It goes right
that white rock.
A little clear. Let's go try it. See if we can get close enough to the road and walk over in there. Let's do it.
When we got there, obviously we were close to pulling this bull in to about 100 yards, just through the trees, couldn't quite pull him in, and then obviously probably the wind switched and the bulls and all of his cows took off. So we had a pretty fun morning though, hearing lots of bulls, getting in close, but just didn't pan out. And we watched the bull run to the other side of the mountain. There's two areas to this hunt where there's a lower country, which we were trying to shoot, and we'd been hunting for the first three days almost. And the elk had kind of been pushed, so the property manager decided that it was time for us to go over to what we called elk heaven. And let me tell you, if you want to go to elk heaven, go to Sand Creek, CWMU. I couldn't believe what we saw. From this area, you could hear there's probably 40 bulls and 200 to 300 head of elk just going nuts. Shot. Time was ticking, so the manager decided let's walk in there if Riley could handle walking up there, which he was doing great at this point and eager to go get in close with the bull out. So instantly we heard a bull coming down, bugling off the mountain, and we didn't barely had time to set up, and it turns out to be about 250 yards, which is a pretty good shot. Now mind you, this is the first encounter with a big bull after chasing for nearly a year and never really been around, you know, shooting or hunting, or the first bull, and all of a sudden you see this gorgeous bull coming down off the mountainside. You know, the butterflies, the adrenaline, the excitement. I would call it bull fever was at an all-time high. After the encounter with this big bull, we went to check for blood, and there was no sign of blood, and we saw the bull run off quite well on his own accord. So obviously, watching footage, we figured that he just had some clean misses. It was obvious that we're right there in the middle of the morning, and everything's bedded down. We knew that it would be best. These guys have never walked into the bedding area, and we certainly didn't want to disturb it, so we just figured to go back, regroup, eat, come back a little later in the day. We sat at a water hole for several hours in the afternoon, but it was just down below elk heaven, and with nothing coming in and the daylight hours slipping, we moved in for the last hour of the day back up to elk heaven, where we could just hear the onslaught of elk bugling that had been going 24/7. So I've been guiding elks for a lot of years and hunting, and I saw some behavior at this moment that I've never witnessed ever before. We had literally 15 minutes of light before the end of the day, and the whole herd of elk and this whole entire drainage had just gone out of sight. They've gone over the hillside. However, in watching these elk leave and trying to film them with the camera, I noticed one bull that was all muddied up, had a big busted tine, looked like a great mature bull, but he was busted. And at that moment, we really didn't have any interest of him other than I noticed this bull standing there, staring back towards us as all the elk, it's like a whole river of elk hides moving one direction, and there's a stationary bull standing his ground as they all filed past him. And he was just kind of watching and looking at us because we were in plain sight on the hillside. There's 4 people or 5. And we thought, well, that bull, don't even worry about it. He's gonna see us turn around and follow the herd. Well, he never did. And that's the crazy thing to this hunt. I think this is where perhaps a miracle comes in at the end of this hunt for a very special young man. As we started cow calling a little bit, and he looked very interested. And so we said, no, don't shoot at this moment, Riley. Wait a little bit because it's 285 yards. Let's see how close we can get him in. And so he got a little closer and closer, and he came into 250 to 200 to 175 to 150 to 135 and gave us a broadside shot. And then he held up looking around, and that's when Riley took the final shot.
As close as he gets, okay? If he turns around, then we'll shoot him. He's 150. Here he comes.
Been a long time coming.
If you've ever heard of the cliche, the last day, last ray, Riley got his last day, last ray bull. To walk up and see this bull have such an amazing, fighting personality, busted up antlers, just show his toughness, his grit, his determination. Not a better bull could have been taken on the mountain that day than this bull for Riley.